Good afternoon. Joining me in this press conference is Resident Agent in charge of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Joel Marcus, Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Albuquerque Office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Renee McDermott, Chief Deputy of the United States Marshal Service for the District of New Mexico, Alex Ramos, Secretary of the New Mexico Department of Corrections, Secretary Greg Marcantil, and Sheriff Manny Gonzalez with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. As you all know, on Saturday, January the 3rd, 2015, at approximately 2:35 in the morning, DWI officer Lou Golson initiated a traffic stop near the intersection of San Mateo Boulevard and San Mateo Lane. The vehicle that was stopped was a 2000 silver Isuzu. Officer Golson approaches the vehicle, the car door opens, and the suspect opens fire, firing multiple rounds from a handgun at Officer Golson. We have a video we'd like to show you.
Turn it off. Start 4355, San Mateo Lane, San Mateo. That's been 2780. WMA, blue jacket. Running northbound San Mateo with a blue hat, blue jeans.
And we'll show you another video.
This is the same event, just slowed down so the events unfold a little bit more clearly.
From the time the camera is activated until the audio portion begins is approximately 30 seconds. That's the time delay that's built into the camera system.
Turn it off.
As you can see, Officer Golson was shot multiple times, and he falls to the ground as a result of being shot. The suspect closes the door, and Officer Golson returns fire, hitting the vehicle, the left rear of the vehicle. The suspect then runs north on San Mateo. The officer, as you heard, calls in and advises dispatch that he'd been shot several times. He gives a description of the suspect who was not located. Officers respond. I would like to acknowledge the great work of the men and women of the Albuquerque Fire Department who arrived at the scene very, very quickly and rendered emergency care and trauma care to Officer Golson at the scene, and the search began for the suspect. As a result of the criminalistics part of this investigation, the Albuquerque Police Department Criminal Forensics Unit discovered fingerprints were found from the suspect, Christopher Torres, on the exterior of the stolen Isuzu. Fingerprints were also found on an alcohol bottle inside of the vehicle. DNA evidence was also collected from a firearm that was left inside the vehicle, and yesterday, very late, we were able to confirm that it was, in fact, Cook's DNA evidence. The spent casings that were found at the scene were 9mm, which matched the caliber of the semi-automatic firearm which was found inside the vehicle. Based on the evidence that was found at the scene, the suspect fired 5 shots at Officer Golson. Officer Golson was struck 3 times. Officer Golson returned fire at the offender approximately 8 times. And again, this is still under criminalistics investigation. This is a photograph of the firearm that was found inside of the stolen vehicle. We couldn't have done this investigation without the assistance of many agencies. And I would like to acknowledge the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Albuquerque office, the United States Marshals Service for the District of New Mexico, the New Mexico State Police, the New Mexico Department of Corrections, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, and also the reward money that was provided by the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and the United States Marshals Service. And the other agency that was very helpful through this investigation was the District of New Mexico, United States Attorney's Office. On January the 2nd of 2015 at 10:13, the Isuzu was reported stolen from a car dealership in Albuquerque called That Car Place. The suspect asked to test drive the vehicle and drove away with the car. This morning at 4 a.m., deputies from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department arrested the offender who was walking near Edith and Montano. The suspect attempted to conceal his identity when he was taken into custody. He was positively identified through fingerprints this morning as Christopher Cook, who was briefly interviewed and then requested an attorney. Christopher Cook has been booked into the Metropolitan County Detention Center on the following charges: attempt to commit murder, felony, felon in possession of a firearm, shooting at or from a motor vehicle, receiving and transferring of a motor vehicle, and within the last hour, federal authorities have filed federal charges against Christopher Cook. Christopher Cook has a well-known criminal history in this area. Christopher Cook was released from prison about a year ago after serving a 6.5-year sentence for multiple violent felonies. At the time of the shooting, Christopher Cook had pending felony warrants for his arrest for property crime offenses relating to auto theft. He also has a history of drug use, drug possession, aggravated assault, armed robbery, felon in possession of weapons, fleeing, evading, and also property crimes. At this time, I would like to thank again the United States Attorney's Office, and I will read to you a statement from the United States Attorney's Office. Christopher Cook is charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm in a federal criminal complaint filed earlier today by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The criminal complaint alleges that Cook unlawfully possessed a firearm and ammunition on January the 3rd of 2015. It alleges Cook was prohibited from possessing either firearms or ammunition because of his prior conviction of multiple felonies. Cook was arrested earlier today on related state charges and is currently in state custody. He will be transferred to federal custody to answer the federal charges in the federal complaint. If convicted of the charge in the criminal complaint, Cook faces up to 10 years in federal prison. If the court makes a determination that Cook was an armed career criminal, Cook will face an enhanced sentence of a mandatory minimum of 15 years in prison to a maximum of life in prison. Charges in the criminal complaints are accusations at this time. All defendants are presumed to be innocent unless found guilty under a court of law, and that is a statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office. I would also like to acknowledge the great work of the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department and the very alert deputies. And to discuss that with you, Sheriff Manny Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. I'm Sheriff Manny Gonzalez of the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. First, I just want to mention is that this was a very personal matter, not only for the department, but for myself in the fact that I worked with Officer Golson when he was on the SWAT team for Albuquerque Police Department, and also me while I was in my young career with the Sheriff's Office. And more so because his son is a new graduate of our academy. So it became very personal to our agency, and I want to really applaud the rank and file, everybody that did the intelligence on every level from the local, the state, and federal level that helped us get the information that we needed in order to apprehend the suspect. So with that being said, I just want to make mention that we'll continue to collaborate. Me and the chief have plans on meeting in the near future on other initiatives in terms of what units and how we can work more strongly and become more unified, because the more organized, the more we communicate, the better our efforts are going to be. And that's what people are asking for. That's what the community is asking for, and that's what we're going to do. If there's any questions in terms of the investigation, we're not the primary investigation agency in this effort. So I've designated the public information officer from the Sheriff's Office, Aaron Williamson, to comment on that. If you have any questions in terms of the apprehension, I'll invite him up to the front right now if he wants to speak, or if you have any questions. If you have any questions of me, I'll take those right now.
Can somebody walk us through how he was arrested in you or
Absolutely. Aaron, please come forward.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry, what was the question?
how you guys found him?
Deputies were on a traffic stop this morning at about 4 o'clock, and as they were finishing up that traffic stop, they observed Mr. Cook walking south on Edith. They said that it appeared that he was staggering due to the temperatures outside, time of day. They turned around to do a welfare check on the individual. He appeared to be Mr. Cook, the suspect that they were looking for. After talking with him, they weren't able to positively identify him. He kept providing false names, false date of births. At that point, they took him to fingerprint. He was positively, excuse me, was positively identified as Christopher Cook and turned over to APD this morning.
Did he resist at all?
He went without any hesitation.
Did he appear to be under the influence of drugs like that?
At this point, we didn't have any of that information. They were just concerned, like I said, he was staggering. We're concerned for his safety because of the cold weather.
Any idea if that staggering was due to him being hit by one of Officer Golson's bullets?
We have no information on that at this point.
Can you talk about what he said to your deputies? We heard from him this morning during the perp walk. What has he said to your deputies during the time that he was taken into custody?
That part is still under investigation. I do know that, like I said, he did provide multiple false names to the deputies. But as to as to the specifics, we're going to go ahead and let APD work on that.
Can you tell us about his background? I know he's been incarcerated in and out of jail and prison, but where did he go? Is he from Albuquerque? Did he go to high school here?
We don't have that information, but we can tell you that it was very difficult to find him because he was in fact homeless. He had been moving from house to house, place to place, which made it very, very difficult for us to find him since the search began. All of his known associates had disassociated with him. They had no information that they could provide to any of our criminal investigators as to his whereabouts. What's interesting is several people were well aware of the $17,000 reward money. However, nobody knew where he was. If it wasn't for the great work, the outstanding work of two deputies doing what they do every single day and recognizing that this could be the suspect, we would still be looking for him. If they would have not taken that initiative to engage him, we would still be looking for him. This was a very difficult fugitive investigation as a result, because everybody that was known to him had disassociated themselves with him.
Chief, can you talk about the role that DNA has played in this investigation? The DNA found at the crime scene and also linking that to past arrests.
Despite what you see on television, and it's very important for people to understand this, DNA does not provide us with instant results. It never has, and it never will until the science gets better. It takes days for DNA to be processed and for a DNA analyst to make verification on a DNA match. DNA was found on the firearm. Our criminalistics people were able to swab the firearm and was able to collect DNA evidence, but it's a timely process despite what you see on television. So late yesterday when we received the DNA confirmation, we happened to be at the U.S. Attorney's Office. We spoke with the U.S. Attorney and his staff, as well as the Chief of the Criminal Investigation Division, to let them know that we did have a DNA match. And they worked very, very quickly with Joel Marcus, our resident agent in charge of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, to put together a formal federal complaint. There were so many agencies that assisted with this, and you see them here with us. And that brought to bear the resources that we needed to do an outstanding fugitive investigation. The Marshal Service yesterday, their assets arrived from Texas. In the event that we received any more information on the person's whereabouts, and we, as the sheriff stated, in New Mexico, because we're so poor with law enforcement resources, we really depend upon each other. That includes our local law enforcement, whether it's the Albuquerque Police Department or whoever, the sheriff's departments, as well as our federal partners, to work together on such cases that carry such a big priority for the community and for the departments.
Chief, can you talk about, you all may have known that this was a person of interest on Saturday, but didn't release that name to the public. And if we look at New York City, when their officers were shot, they released that information and the video right away. Can you talk about the process and the decision to hold off on releasing this name to the public?
You're again comparing two completely different incidents. The incident in New York, the assailant shot and killed the two officers, then went into a train station and shot himself. There was no fugitive. In this case, we had a fugitive. We had to verify factually that it was this person that fired that handgun at the officer. That process takes time. Not like what you see in a 48-minute show on television, it takes time. And while that person was a person of interest, that's all he was. If we were to release that information premature, it may have driven him deeper underground, and we would still be looking for him. It's a decision that was jointly made by the investigative agencies to withhold that information until we could confirm factually that it was, in fact, Cook.
And when did you all verify the DNA information?
Not until late yesterday afternoon.
Chief, would BCSO get the federal reward money then?
It'd be a very happy
Deputy.
deputy, wouldn't it?
I thought about that earlier, not for myself, but for,
No, law enforcement officers are not eligible for the rewards.
And then did he have any family here? He said he's associates, but does he have any family now for here?
Yes, he did in the greater Rio Grande Valley area. He did have family, and none of his family knew where he was.
Chief, was he suffering from any sort of mental illness or anything like that you could tell us about?
I'm not a physician. I can't make any comment on that. We just don't know.
Can you give an update on Officer Golson's status?
Yes.
And then that'll be the last question. Tanner will have your packet with the video, the warrant, and any other things that you might have questions will be in there, I promise.
Last night, we left the hospital with Officer Golson and his family. This morning, when Officer Golson was contacted that Cook had been arrested, I can tell you the family was greatly relieved. One of you asked us yesterday, was this a targeted attack, or was this just something that happened instantaneously? We still don't know that information. The family doesn't know that information. So you can imagine what it's like for the family not to have this person in custody. The family is very grateful not only to the police departments, the federal agencies, our federal partners, the sheriff's department, but they're also very grateful to our community. Just, I think it's a reflection of him as a human. Last night, a young man came to the hospital wanting to wish him well-being. It was actually a young man that he had issued a traffic citation to. Yeah. We met him. His name was Miguel. And Miguel wanted to make sure that that officer knew that the community was thinking of him, that their thoughts and prayers were with him. And I think that speaks to the character and the nature of our community. So I'll take one more question.
Chief, is there any indication at this point, do you know what he has been doing the last 2 days?
We have no idea what he has been doing. Those are all things that which will continue to be part of the investigation, is to see where he has been.
When he was apprehended, was he injured at all?
To my knowledge, no, he was not injured and did not require any medical care.
Real quick, Officer Golson, you mentioned over the weekend it hit twice, if you remember, 3 times. Do you know where that third bullet struck, Officer Golson?
No, you'll find out. It's all in
Yeah, it's in the criminal complaint. We're going to provide that to you. All that information as far as the extent of his injuries and all that is in the criminal complaint. And just real quick, I want to thank the United States Attorney's Office. They rushed over the criminal complaint so we could provide it to you at the conclusion of this press conference. Again, I want to thank the media for helping us in this case. We couldn't have done it without you, so thank you very, very much. Thank you.